This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger Delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
On June 18th, 2024, baseball lost one of its greatest players, Willie Mays. There's been mountains of articles and profiles that have come out honoring and recapping his amazing career. But we're going to take a different route on today's episode. We're going to look at some of the lesser-known corners of his journey. So settle in as we explore 9 facts you probably didn't know about the Say Hey Kid. Today on Rounders, a history of baseball in America. Hey, baseball fans. Welcome to Rounders, your baseball history podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lambert. Get ready to step into the time machine with us, and we're not just talking stats and scores. We're digging into the heart and soul of the players, teams, and countries that have made this a global sport. From the underdog stories to those jaw-dropping moments, Rounders is your front seat to the epic journey of baseball. So grab a seat in the digital bleachers, relax, and let's swing for the fences together. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the show. I am your host, Jeff Lambert. It's great to be with you to recap another episode. So much has happened in the past month. It was hard to pick, I think, what to focus on, but we had Willie Mays pass away, and I immediately realized we had to stop our production schedule. We had to make some time to talk about his amazing career. We haven't spent an episode delving in depth into who he was as a person, not only on the field, but off the field. We're going to take a moment to look at some of those items today. I tried to focus on some stories and facts that you wouldn't have necessarily seen in some of the larger publications that have come out since his passing away. So we're going to try and look at those little known facts that you may not have heard before to give more perspective to his life. So before we jump into that, I just want to remind you quickly, if you're new to the show, thank you for tuning in. Remember, we have a podcast that you can check out. You may be listening right now. We also have this show on YouTube now. If you'd like to see the video version of this, that's available. And then, of course, you can sign up as a free subscriber to our Substack, and you can receive the bonus show that we release every week called This Week in Baseball History, where we go through some of the main moments that happen during the week. Famous home runs, signings, births, deaths, anything related to baseball history that's of note that you can share at the water cooler during the week, or just relive moments that you might have seen from growing up with this sport. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already, go to rounders.substack.com to check that out. If you're already a subscriber, thank you so much. I appreciate your support. So let's go ahead and jump into those 9 areas where we're going to learn a little bit more about the great Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays. Before we jump into those 9 lesser-known stories about Willie Mays and his career, I do want to summarize his career for people who may be new to baseball or who haven't really delved into learning a lot about this legendary player of the game. So we're going to zoom out and we're going to just take a snapshot look at his career as a whole. Now, for those of you who think you may know Willie Mays' stats, things have changed recently. As of December 2020, Major League Baseball announced a change in how their stats are recorded. They took the numbers from 7 Negro League baseball teams between 1920 and 1948, and they officially included them in MLB records. So because of the fact that Willie Mays played for the 1948 Birmingham Black Barons of the Negro American League before he joined the National League, his career totals have increased, and that's affected his rankings for certain career totals. So adding those in with the most updated stats, let's look and see just some of the amazing milestones that he achieved during his career. Let's start by looking at his single season and career records, right? He had 7,112 putouts as an outfielder. That ranks number 1 in Major League history. And he had 657 more putouts playing first base throughout his career. So it wasn't just outfield. Certainly talented defensively no matter where he was placed. He had 660 home runs. That's placed him 6th all-time currently. He's behind Barry Bonds' 762, Hank Aaron's 755, and Babe Ruth's 714, but he's 6th on the all-time list in home runs. He scored 2,068 runs. That's put him 7th on the all-time career list. He hit 1,909 RBI, which is good enough for 12th all-time. He had 3,293 hits in his career. That places him number 13th. And he stole 338 bases during his career at a time when base stealing was not a major strategy that was deployed by professional baseball teams. So if we look at that in his context, that is also impressive. He also played in 150 or more games in 13 consecutive seasons. So he had an Iron Man streak to him. He showed up for almost every game and did it consistently for the teams that he played for. So we've looked at some single season and career stats. Let's look at his trophy case. What's the hardware that he built up during his career? He was selected for 24 All-Star games, and he was the All-Star Game MVP for 2 of those years in 1963 and 1968. He won 12 Gold Glove Awards. He did that beginning in 1957, and that was the year the honor was officially started being bestowed, for Gold Glove years. So as soon as the record started being kept for that, he started winning those Gold Gloves. So 12 over the course of his career. He was named the MVP for the National League in 1954 and 1965, almost a decade apart, just the dominance that he displayed. He stole 338 bases. Oh, I already mentioned that. Excuse me. Wow, I'm losing my point here. He also played on 4 pennant-winning teams. So for the Giants, the team won the pennant in 1951, 1954, and 1962. And then towards the tail end of his career, he won another pennant with the New York Mets in 1973. And he also added 1 World Series championship to his trophy case, which he won with the 1954 Giants. So as you can see, the list here is incredibly long for what he accomplished during his time in Major League Baseball. And his legacy amongst historians and peers is, non-negotiable here. There was a survey in 1999 that the Associated Press put out, and it was asked of athletes, writers, and historians to answer who they thought was the greatest player ever. And that survey found that Willie Mays was ranked the 2nd greatest figure of all time, which was behind Babe Ruth. In 2019, Major League Baseball's MLB network put out another poll that they released for current and former players to answer, and Willie Mays was voted the greatest defensive player of all time from that survey. So certainly held in high regard, not just amongst fans, but amongst players and coaches and people who played with him, his peers, throughout his career as well. Leo DeRocher, who was his manager during the time that he played for the New York Giants, I think had a great quote to summarize the career of Willie Mays. So he said, quote, "Willie could do everything from the day he joined the Giants. He never had to be taught a thing. The only other player who could do it all was Joe DiMaggio," end quote. But then we have a quote from Joe DiMaggio, who also had the utmost respect for Willie Mays. And he stated in an interview that, quote, "Willie Mays is the closest to being perfect that I have ever seen," end quote. So that's Willie Mays in a nutshell. He accomplished so much as a player. And it really, I hope that puts into perspective for fans who are younger, maybe newer to the game, just how dominant he was and how important he was and is to the game of baseball. So now that we've set that baseline for his greatness, let's go ahead and jump into 9 facts you probably didn't know about Willie Mays. Fact number 1, Willie Mays was a 3rd-generation ball player. So Willie wasn't a guy that picked up the sport just on random. He came from a family that loved and appreciated the sport and encouraged him to take part in it. So let's trace the lineage all the way back, starting with his grandfather named Walter. Walter was a sharecropper in Tennessee, and he would play during his off time as a pitcher for a regional baseball team specifically for African Americans. So he started that trend of the Mays family playing baseball. And that continued on with Willie Mays' father, William. William also moonlighted as a baseball player, and he made it to a semi-pro league, which was known as the Tennessee Coal and Iron League. And he was so good that he actually picked up a nickname that most people recognized who followed the sport in that region. He was nicknamed the Cat for his quick reflexes and his speed on the base paths. So we have Willie's grandfather and Willie's father both playing for organized teams and excelling on the field. And that brings us to Willie Mays, right? So his mother also had a background of playing sports competitively. His mom, Anna, also contributed in high school. She ran track and she led her basketball team to 3 consecutive state championships. So she brought an athletic pedigree to the family in addition to his father and grandfather playing baseball. Now, as the story goes, his father, Willie's father, William, was so into baseball that he would regularly place a baseball in Willie's crib. And as a result, baby Willie would want to follow the ball wherever it went. And as the story goes, Willie learned to walk at just 6 months because he started trying to walk towards the same baseball that was in his crib that was sitting on a nearby chair. Now, again, that's just a story that was told by a family member in an interview, was never confirmed by Willie himself. He did say once in an interview, though, that might push back on this a little bit. He stated that in an interview that his parents never pushed him to play baseball. I don't know if we would categorize that as pushing someone to play baseball, but it may be a little bit at odds the two. But the point here for this first fact is Willie was not someone who just discovered baseball. This was something that was entrenched in his family history, not only the game of baseball, but playing competitively. Fact number 2, Willie Mays was the subject of a chart-topping song. Yes, that's right. So in 1954, an R&B group named the Treniers released a song entitled Say Hey, the Willie Mays Song. And the story of how the song came to be is really interesting. So we have a situation where a press agent who knew Willie Mays made a bet with a record industry executive that he can make a song about Willie into a chart-topping hit that would be played across the United States. So that press agent, he was a guy by the name of Howard Werner, and he had gotten to know Willie because sometimes early on in his career, Willie Mays would play on barnstorming teams during the off-season and, go to different states and play friendly games against other clubs. And we would have Howard Werner go on those barnstorming tours with Willie. So they got to know each other pretty well. So they had, a rapport with each other. So Werner approached Willie and said, hey, I'd like to release a song about you. Would you be willing to do that? Can we use your name? And would you be willing to record your voice in the song? So he got the okay from Willie. So the Werner then approached and convinced legendary producer Quincy Jones to arrange the lyrics for the song. So once that was done, we had the hiring of an up-and-coming R&B trio named the Treniers, and they were hired to record the vocals of this song that had been put together. And the result was a pretty catchy song. I would encourage you to look it up on YouTube. It's got a nice sound to it. It featured Willie's voice in certain clips throughout the song. And the song overall described the rise of him as an American cultural icon. Now, it never reached number 1 status or anything of that nature, but it did open more doors for Willie Mays because it opened up opportunities for him to have cameos in television shows. He started appearing in movies with certain cameos. So the Hollywood door opened up for him because of this song that became moderately popular once it was released. Now, the song has received even more attention in recent years, partly because of the fact that we've gone back and we've certainly celebrated his career more and more, but also Ken Burns' 1994 documentary entitled Baseball, I would encourage you to check it out if you haven't seen it, features that song, and it became quite popular for people that hadn't heard it before. Fact number 3, Willie Mays was a regular in a comic strip. So, some of you might be familiar. I knowing this is going back a little bit of ways into history if you're younger, but there was a guy named Charles M. Schulz. And Charles Schulz released a very popular comic strip for decades known as the Peanuts. So you may be familiar with the Peanuts, Charlie Brown, Snoopy, Woodstock, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a situation here where Schulz was obviously a fan of Willie Mays when he was making these comic strips because Willie Mays made several appearances in these Peanuts comic strips. Let me give you an example. So during one particular comic strip, Charlie Brown is taking part in a spelling bee, and he's asked by the moderator to spell the word maze, a maze like you would go through to find your way out. But in the comic, Charlie Brown responds by spelling maze M-A-Y-S. So that's one example, and the admiration shown through in other ways as well. So there's multiple examples of comics where Charlie Brown, who played baseball in several different stories throughout the Peanuts comic strip and cartoon history, and Charlie Brown was seen wearing a jersey frequently, a Giants jersey, that would feature the number 24 on the back, which was Willie Mays' number during his time in New York. Fact number 4, Willie Mays purposely made routine plays seem harder. Now, this one might be a little harder to stomach, but think about it from the sense of Willie Mays knew how to make the game the most interesting possible for the fans. So Willie was known throughout his career for making these acrobatic, thrilling plays that would wow the crowds. And he also had a knack for getting these clutch hits late in games, belting these home runs that would end the game. And you have to ask yourself, was Willie always just one of those players that was in the right place at the right time to make all these amazing plays? Well, we have two individuals that state that on some occasions, Willie knew how to play the crowd. So Leonard Kopit, who's a well-known baseball writer, he was most popular during the 1960s and 70s. He believed that Willie Mays would add some flair to his routine plays to keep fans engaged. And he would do that by just waiting an extra second before chasing a fly ball so he could catch it while sliding, doing things like that. Tim McCarver, the legendary Tim McCarver, who was a legendary baseball broadcaster, he stated the same. He believed that Willie would sometimes deliberately miss a hittable curveball or off-speed pitch earlier on in the game, so a pitcher might be more willing to throw him that same pitch later in a game in a more crucial circumstance. Fact number 5. Willie Mays' high school teacher was the mother of Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. So Willie Mays really became the all-around athlete and future phenom that we saw on the baseball field during his time at the Fairfield Industrial High School. And during his time there, he was taught by Angelina Rice, who was the mother of future Secretary of State under the Bush administration, Condoleezza Rice. Now, in her memoir, Extraordinary Ordinary People, which was released in 2010, Condoleezza Rice wrote that she remembered her mother telling her stories about teaching and coaching Willie Mays. Well, I shouldn't say coaching, but tutoring him. And there was a quote that she wrote in the book that Angelina Rice said to Willie Mays as a teenager. She had reportedly told him, quote, "You're going to be a ball player. If you need to leave a little early for practice, let me know." So Willie, of course, was someone who really made his name known in high school, received offers from multiple teams right out of high school trying to get him signed to a professional deal. He certainly could have been influenced to a great extent by being in the classroom of Angelina Rice. And of course, we know that she had impacts on a lot of people because her daughter went on to be one of the most powerful individuals in the country. Fact number 6. Racism almost blocked Willie Mays from buying a house in San Francisco. So even a multi-time all-star like Willie Mays struggled when the team moved from New York to San Francisco in finding a place to live. Now keep in mind, this is in the 1960s. At that time, it was not uncommon for white neighborhoods to complain that property values would decline if a black family moved in, as we're seeing desegregation occur, as we're seeing these moves to try and integrate neighborhoods. Willie was in a very white-centric part of San Francisco and had tried to buy a house on the famous Miraloma Drive, which was his really exclusive community in the western hills of the city. There was a gentleman that lived there named Walter Nestoloff, great name, right? Who had initially accepted Willie's offer and said, "Yeah, I'll sell my house to you." But later on, just a few days later, went back on the deal and said, "I'm not going to accept your offer, Mr. Mays." So after some research was done, it came out that Mr. Nestoloff was a home builder in San Francisco. He depended on these communities to get work to be able to build other homes. And other neighbors had approached him after they heard that he accepted an offer from Willie Mays and pressured him not to sell to an African American because they didn't want to have their home values drop and even threatened Mr. Nestoloff with not getting future work in the area if he went through with this deal. So we have an impasse here. There was a handshake deal. The information was out there, and Willie decided to not let it go. He fought back, rightfully so. So he and his wife turned to the press. They went to the San Francisco Chronicle, which was the top newspaper in the region, and the publication ran a front page article on the issue that Willie Mays had been denied a housing deal based on the color of his skin. In addition to that article, the city's mayor, George Christopher, offered to let Willie Mays and his wife stay at their home temporarily while they continued to have that home purchase worked out. So putting his fame where his mouth was to show public support for Willie and living in the city. And there was national outrage over this when the article came out. And you have to think about a time when, news travels a little bit more slowly. You had radio, you had television, but certainly not the social media that we think of today. But this article caught fire. There was national outcry. How could this be done to one of baseball's greatest players? And the city really got a black eye from this because this occurred. And it got to the point that even Jackie Robinson, the great Jackie Robinson, spoke out in the press and released a statement in favor of Willie Mays in the situation. And Jackie Robinson had this to say, quote, "This will hurt America overseas and unite the Negro at home. We've got to wake up here in America, in India, and in the communist countries. This is going to be played up. It's going to hurt," end quote. So all this pressure was coming down on the city. And after a few days, Mr. Nestoloff decided that he was going to honor the original deal with Willie Mays, and he sold that home on Miraloma Drive to Willie and his family.
Hey, Atlanta. Say hello to Small Business Help from Apple. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. From helping you choose the right devices to setting them up hassle-free, we can help you build your business in no time. Speak to a business expert and get the help you need at no cost whatsoever. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/smallbusiness or visit an Apple store to learn more.
Fact number 7. Willie Mays was suspended from Major League Baseball over gambling concerns. So in 1979, Willie had finished up his playing career, and he had signed a deal with the New York Mets to stay on in the front office. Now, the pay obviously wasn't as good as when he was a player, so after signing a deal to stay on with the Mets, he was approached by Bally, which was a company that owned an Atlantic City hotel and casino company, and he was asked to join their board at the rate of $100,000 a year. Remember, this is 1979. So Willie agreed. He signed a 10-year deal with the company while keeping his position with the New York Mets. So Bowie Kuhn, the baseball commissioner at the time, heard about this. He approached Mays and said, "I'm sorry, you cannot hold a job with a company that openly promotes gambling and keep your salaried position with a Major League Baseball team." So Mays had a decision to make, and he made the ultimate decision to keep the job with Bally and forego the remainder of the $50,000 yearly payments from the Mets that he was getting. So that was supposed to go through 1981. So he basically severed his contract early from the Mets to keep the position with Bally. In response to that, Bowie Kuhn still suspended him from Major League Baseball. Now, he was doing this largely because he was trying to take a symbolic gesture towards keeping gambling out of the game. He did this in 1983, a few years later, to Mickey Mantle, because Mickey Mantle took a job working at the Claridge Casino and Hotel in Atlantic City. But this was a dark spot on Willie Mays' career. But that lasted until 1985, when Bowie Kuhn stepped down, and Peter Ueberroth, who was Bowie Kuhn's successor, decided to step forward, and he felt that it was a black eye on the game, and he removed both bans on both Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle and said, "You know what? You're outside the sport. We're going to revoke this ban just based on who you are." These are two guys that were so intricate to the fabric of Major League Baseball during the 20th century. So we had Willie Mays continue to work for Bally, and he ended up going back to Major League Baseball, and he signed on as a part-time hitting coach for the San Francisco Giants. So He was able to work in both industries. I know for some baseball purists, it could be seen that Bowie Kuhn made the right call. It could also be argued that Willie Mays could do both because he wasn't directly affecting games on the field. It's a tough conversation to have for sure. In the late 1980s, even after this was taken care of, the Giants gave a symbolic lifetime contract to Willie Mays as a front office consultant, which he kept until his death. Fact number 8. Willie Mays learned his famous basket catch while serving in the military. So at the conclusion of the 1951 season, Willie Mays was drafted into the U.S. Army to serve in the Korean War. Now, he was able to play a very small fraction of the 1952 season. He played 34 games for the New York Giants, hit .236 with 4 home runs before being shipped out. And during the final game, he actually received a standing ovation when the Giants were playing their arch rival Brooklyn Dodgers. The fans showed their appreciation for him, even in a place where he was considered the arch rival. So he was able to play that little snapshot of the 1952 season. He ended up reporting to Fort Eustis in Virginia on May 29th, and he spent most of his time playing for the Fort Eustis Wheels military baseball team, which featured other major and minor league players that had been drafted. He was also placed in charge in a non-combat role of being a physical training instructor for the department at that particular location. And this is where Willie Mays learned his famous basket catch. He credits in interviews a fellow outfielder that played for the team that was on the base, a guy by the name of Al Fortunato. And Fortunato was the guy that showed him how to position his body while running to make a routine catch look remarkable, which was in itself something that was seen many times after that wowed the fans and how he was able to catch the ball. He learned it here earlier on his career at a military base. So you may have seen the basket catch in action from highlights of watching Willie Mays. It's when Willie would catch the ball by letting it drop into his glove right around the abdomen area instead of using his outstretched hands. Now, this was the highlight, I guess you could say, of his time in the military. Served in a non-combatant role in a very important way. He was discharged on March 1st, 1954, and he reported to the Giants spring training camp the following day, eager to resume his professional baseball career. And fact number 9, you may not have known that Willie Mays modeled his batting stance after his childhood hero. So, Willie had a very distinct batting stance, and you may think maybe he just learned that on his own in a particular way, but he actually fashioned the way that he stood at the plate based on his childhood hero, who is Joe DiMaggio. So similar to DiMaggio, Mays would stand with his legs spread apart, and he would equally distribute his weight and hold the bat very high, and he would place his right thumb while sticking out while he was holding the bat while waiting for pitches, and he would grip that bat really tightly when he was swinging. So that last-minute motion of bringing his thumb back in and making that last-minute cut was something that DiMaggio did, and there are certain people that credit that stance, just like it did for DiMaggio, with Mays' powerful swing that he exhibited. Now, to maximize his energy, Mays also eliminated any extra movements, and he would open his hips during the swing. All this helped him be a better hitter, and he modeled it on one of his hitters, like we said, Joe DiMaggio. Well, folks, that's the 9 little-known facts you may or may not have known about Willie Mays. I hope you found that interesting and intriguing and opened up your understanding of this famous player's career. When we talk about remembering and celebrating Willie Mays, I think it's important to think about just how revered he is by former players, by managers, and how big that scope is. It's not just the fans that really revere this guy. Anybody he came in contact with really appreciated the skill level and the way that he played the game. An example of that, the Sporting News, they polled fans to create an all-century team at the end of the 90s. And just like we talked about in the beginning, the fans ranked Willie Mays second on that all-century team, just behind Babe Ruth. Now, there was a book that was put together based on this survey by the Sporting News called Baseball's All-Century Team. And Willie Mays was asked to write the foreword for this book. And this is what he had to say. I thought it was really interesting. He said, quote, "It's an honor to be named the number 2 player in baseball history. I have the satisfaction of knowing that when they call my name, everybody knows me. If you'd asked me when I was 15 in Birmingham if all this could happen, There's no way I would have said yes, end quote. So his inclusion on this all-century team and ending up second all-time really is a fitting tribute to an exceptional career. No argument there whatsoever. And I think that he was the kind of player that only comes along very rarely, where he excelled in every single aspect of the game. We know that his iconic catch in center field, the catch, the over the shoulder, that's etched in the minds of baseball fans. That iconic catch in center field that we've all seen, the over the shoulder one, that's etched in baseball fans' minds across different generations. And that's just one example of how Willie has affected us as a player. Those remarkable achievements really point out the enduring legacy that he has for all of us, and certainly it cements his place as one of baseball's greats. And I am honored to have the chance to look deeper into his career in this episode. Well, folks, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining me. And remember, there are always only two seasons, winter and baseball. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us for this episode as we explored another amazing moment from baseball history. You can help grow the show by liking us on YouTube and your podcast app of choice. Don't forget to head on over and sign up for the free email newsletter and the bonus show, This Week in Baseball History. Just go to www.rounders.substack.com. A special thanks to our premium subscribers that are helping us grow for just $1.25 a week, and to our starting 9 supporters, Nathan Halverson and Jack Wilson. You are the producers helping make this the top baseball history show out there. See you next week, and remember, there are only 2 seasons, winter and baseball.